Hey, what's up, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about the concept of private prayer and some of the issues that I have with that. So, I remember growing up in church, and the pastor would pray. These were very long prayers, so sometimes we would time him. They went on for sometimes 3 or 4 minutes. I don't think they ever went past 5 minutes, but they were getting close sometimes. So I would fall asleep, the middle of the prayer, and I'd wake up at the end for the Amen. And I remember this, and I remember thinking how fake these prayers were. I knew that the pastor was addressing the congregation and not God. You could tell that the message of his sermon, the prayer was just an extension of that, and he was trying to communicate something to us. So I looked more at the Bible, and I found this verse in Matthew 6:6. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. So I saw this verse, and there was an apparent contradiction. And these are contradictions you see a lot in the Christian life. People take verses, and if they're fine with the message, they move on. But if they don't, then they look at a few other things. You look at this with gay marriage. People look at the verse, it says gay marriage is a sin, or gay relations are a sin. And they look at it, okay, we're fine with that. We don't care about the gays, move on. And then you move on to the issue of slavery. Oh, well, here we need to look at the cultural context. We need to look at a number of other things. And you can kind of twist this verse to mean something that it probably didn't originally. And so you see that Christians often take verses that they don't like and they twist them to mean something they do like, but the verses they're already fine with, they don't look more into, and they just take it at face value. And I see this as a major issue. And so when I'm arguing with people about this, most of them believe in the inerrancy of the Bible, so they have a serious issue. They say, well, there's this verse, but then there's also this verse, so you have to read the verses in context of one another. But if the Bible is inerrant, you shouldn't have to look at different verses to find one middle of the road meaning. It should be separate pieces that you fit together, and they fit perfectly. So I will address the problem. If you believe in the inerrancy of the Bible, I will address some of their counter arguments. So the first one, the blessing of the meal for the 5,000. In this passage, Jesus recognizes God, but he does not communicate with him directly, and that is the definition of prayer. Another thing, people bring up laying on the hands and the apostles healing, the early church, all of that. The early church was not perfect. The Bible recorded historical events if you're going to look at it from an inerrant perspective. So when they say the apostles laid on hands and prayed, that does not mean that that is a guide for the Christian life. There are stories of Ananias and Sapphira. That is clearly bad. And when you look at this verse, you see that it contradicts the teachings of Jesus. Another thing, you could say that the miraculous signs that the apostles did after they prayed gives proof that God is all right with their actions. But what you see in these verses is that the apostles received power from God and then they gave it to other people. It's not in the context of them praying directly on them and God healing them. God actually gave them the power to spread the message to the world. Another thing to remember is when Jesus prayed, he would always go off by himself. You see this in the Bible. One case where it is different, and people kind of have a problem with this, they have a problem with subtlety in general. After the verse that I read in Matthew, there is the Lord's Prayer. And it says, when you pray, pray like this. Jesus is not praying to God in this instance. He is teaching the disciples how to pray when they are going to pray. Practicing for a speech is not the same as giving a speech. And this is an important distinction to remember. Another thing about modern Christianity, we need, if Christianity is going to stay relevant, there needs to be less contradictions in the actions of Christians today. When people look at us, they see the Bible and it says, go to your room, lock your door, don't stand on the street corner. And then there's preachers who go in front of millions of people, broadcasted on TV, and they pray aloud. Anybody can see the contradiction there. So this is a serious problem that needs to be addressed. And I hope you guys, if you've recognized this before, continue to call it out. Or if this is new, continue to explore your own beliefs and figure out what makes the most sense to you. So I will see you guys next week, and I hope you guys have a great week.